To be here. I have a long history with the kingdom. The governor of South Carolina, where I'm from, John West, was the ambassador to the kingdom under President Jimmy Carter. He was a close family friend, so I grew up hearing stories about the kingdom as a child. And then my first proper job in New York City was working for the Oleon Group. I have a long history with Saudi. And before we go on too, I do want to have a hat tip to our moderator here. Dina Powell is the personification of the perfect internal and external public and private person in the United States.
Thank you.
Her family moved from the Middle East to Texas. She attended the University of Texas. She's had a major role in the first Trump administration, and now, for now, she's on the outside. So,
thank you. I'm honored. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. I really appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you so much.
And yes, so we had a very active dialogue in Geneva this weekend. It was very constructive. Both sides came with a clear agenda, but shared interest. We had great mutual respect. And I think what we were able to establish as President Trump and the administration began the tariff program, we had a plan, we had a process, and what we did not have with the Chinese was a mechanism. So the Vice Premier and I now call this the Geneva mechanism to prevent any misunderstandings, because President Trump and Party Chairman Xi have a very good relationship, but the relationship did not make its way down through other levels of government. So I think the important thing is that after this weekend, we have a mechanism to avoid escalation like we had before. We both agreed to bring the tariffs levels down 115%, which I think is very productive, because where we were with 145 and 125 was the equivalent of an unintended embargo. That is not healthy for the two largest economies in the world. It is not healthy for the rest of the world. So I think we can proceed from here. We have a very good framework. And as I said during IMF week in Washington about 3 or 4 weeks ago, there is a possibility, it's not a certainty, but that, as Ray Dalio might say, we could do a big, beautiful rebalancing. President Trump wants to rebalance the American economy back to a manufacturing economy with high precision manufacturing. I think everyone agrees, including Chinese leadership, that they need to rebalance towards more of a consumption and consumer economy. And the dream scenario would be if somehow we could do that together.
And what do you think the next 90 days look like? It sounds like very productive meetings, and now people talking to each other, as you say. Were there areas that you kind of put to the side, or really put everything on the table?
I think everything is on the table. We have a very good framework from President Trump's first administration. There was a treaty that was signed, a trade treaty, a trade agreement that was signed in January 2020. So we're not starting from ground zero. We have a framework, and we can go from there. Obviously, many things have changed over the past 5 years. And look, what we don't want, and both sides agreed, we do not want a generalized decoupling between the two largest economies in the world. What we want is the U.S. is going to decouple in strategic industries, which we saw during COVID, we had become woefully non-self-sufficient. So whether it's medicines, semiconductors, other strategic areas. So the United States will bring those industries home, but the idea isn't a generalized decoupling, and we do have a very large trade deficit with China. That could be solved in many ways, and my hope it is via Chinese buying more American goods and the U.S. selling a kind of opening up of the Chinese consumer, and then that will lead to more fair and balanced trade.
One last question on trade. President Trump has tasked you and Ambassador Greer and Secretary Lutnick to look at other countries and hopefully have other deals like you did with the UK. Do you feel good about several of those also coming through in the next period of time?
Yes, so I've been focused on the Asia deals, of which obviously China is the largest. We've had very productive discussions with Japan. South Korea is going through a governmental change, but before they went into the election cycle, the South Koreans came with very good proposals. Indonesia, who's a large trading partner, has been very forthcoming. The island of Taiwan has presented very good proposal. Thailand, so things on my side of the world, things are going very well. I think the U.S. and Europe may be a bit slower. My personal belief is Europe may have a collective action problem, that the Italians want something that's different than the French, but I'm sure at the end of the day, we will reach a satisfactory conclusion.
Great, thank you. So Your Excellency, we were talking backstage about 2017, when really not many people in the world had heard about Vision 2030. And in 8 pretty short years, it's really remarkable to see all that the kingdom has done in social, economic, and political reform. You have been a key leader in diversifying the Saudi economy, in bringing investment here to the kingdom. Give us sort of, in your view, the status of Vision 2030 and the unique partnership between our 2 economies.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here and for really insightful thoughts. Before I answer the question, I just wanted to comment on His Excellency's comments. In Washington, I actually pushed His Excellency a little bit more than what I would usually in the IMFC meetings. And actually, there was a lot of wisdom in the room. There was really, it gave me a lot of hope, and I actually spoke about it publicly, saying that what I've heard in Washington, and particularly from His Excellency, gives me a lot of confidence that the world is not as in a chaos or in a difficult situation as a lot of people are seeing it. I think there is a plan, and hopefully we will see a resolution, and we started seeing this. So thank you, Mr. Secretary. And Dina, thank you also for all the support that you provided to the relationship. The Saudi-U.S. relationship is, as His Excellency Khalid Faleh mentioned, is 92 plus years old, and it gets stronger and stronger every year. And if you just look at the amount of investments from Saudi in the U.S., it's really significant compared to the size of an economy like Saudi Arabia. It's way, actually multiple folds of any other nation, i.e. any other nation we invest in. And the same the other way. There are a lot of investments from the U.S. in Saudi Arabia, and particularly since the start of Saudi Vision 2030, we have seen actually a significant pickup. Saudi Vision 2030, and I'm sure a lot of the attendees here are aware of what Saudi Vision 2030, but in brief, it's really a long-term vision, a North Star, that actually for the last 7-8 years drove significant part of the society, if not all part of the society, towards one goal, which is transforming this nation economically, socially, and financially to a more sustainable path. We were significantly reliant on one commodity for an extended period of time, which was basically so volatile. So you have the booms and busts in the economic cycles, depending on where the oil price is, and that was not sustainable. So when you have a leadership that actually sets a very clear vision, mobilize the nation behind it, people of Saudi Arabia then really owns it, and they see that actually this is their vision, this is their country, this is their transformation. That's what happened. What happened in the last 7-8 years is incredible in a lot of ways. And I'll give just a few examples. I mean, if you look at some of the very difficult structural changes that requires quite an extended period of time, private investment as a percentage of GDP. I mean, this is a structural anchor in any economy, and to shift it, to increase it, takes really ages and decades sometimes. We had more than 50% growth in the private sector investment as a percentage of GDP, from 16, short of 16 to about 23% now. That is significant. Mm-hmm. This is a long-term investment. The capital formation is significant. Unemployment, we have in the last quarter the lowest unemployment in Saudi history, ever, 3.5%. And amongst the nationals, amongst the Saudis, we have achieved our target for 2030 last quarter, which is 7%. Women empowerment is significant. So bringing half of your society to the productive part of the economy is significant. And that drove a serious change, moving from 17% of women participation in the workforce to 36% is a serious structural change. I could go on, but if you look at even, just I'll leave you with one note, in the tourism, which basically then connects to mobility and logistics, etc. Tourism, we had a target of 100 million visits as per the Tourism International Organization for 2030. We achieved that 2 years ago, simply because there were a lot of attractions in Saudi, and then the nationals did not have to travel abroad. They then had significant expansion of local tourism in addition to inbound tourism. So a lot is happening. In the context of, just reminded by our discussion backstage, a few weeks back when we met in Miami, we talked about what is really happening in Saudi and what kind of investment and investors are we attracting. And we touched on the family offices.
Families and founders.
And that is significant. And I think having that kind of discussion and just showcasing what is happening in Saudi Arabia to the individuals in the U.S. is critical, and I think it's an area where we are focusing on. His Excellency Khalid Faleh, I think, touched on some of this in his speech.
It's so interesting because most of the capital so far has been institutional in nature. And we're seeing at BDG and MSD Partners a number of our families eager to come to the kingdom, eager to actually work with the Olian family and the Saudi families here as well. So that there is this shift that I'm seeing, or not a shift, maybe an addition of capital, Mr. Secretary, you, most of your life, were an investor. And in fact, you were known as one of the greatest investors of your generation. You saw a few global trends before other people did, made some big bets. Part of that definitionally means you know how to manage volatile markets. You recently said we should be prepared for some bumpiness, as we try to reimagine the U.S. economy. And there are three pillars you have talked about, which is reimagining trade, enacting the tax cuts that President Trump started in 2017, and deregulation. Can you just talk a little bit more about those three?
Yes, and I would also say, just to reiterate, the strength of the U.S.-Saudi relationship, that I believe it was my second or third day at my desk, I went around the world, and my first two calls in the evening was to the finance minister in Tokyo. Then the following morning was to His Excellency. So that shows the priorities of the U.S. government. This will be President Trump's first trip. This would have been President Trump's first trip abroad, if not for the death of the Pope. This will be his first state visit. What we are attempting to do in the U.S. is to further create it as the world's premier investment destination. And the Trump economic agenda really consists of three parts. Thus far, we have seen trade, which has gotten most of the publicity, and President Trump wants to reorder the U.S. engagement with other countries. And I will tell you that the tariffs, the non-tariff trade barriers, currency manipulation, and subsidies of labor and capital are coming down quickly. So I am optimistic that on trade, we could actually see more frictionless trade globally. The second part of the agenda, which is moving better than I would have expected, and as a newcomer to Washington, I would say that it was my highest level of anxiety, was the tax bill. The 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act was not passed until December, just before Christmas of President Trump's first year. I believe that we will have it passed this summer, and we will make the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act permanent. We will add more features that are very friendly to capital. We're going to bring back 100% expensing. If you build a factory, in the U.S., you can expense it immediately. The equipment for that factory can be expensed in the first year, and we think that that will be very powerful. That was the most powerful aspect of driving growth and jobs during President Trump's first term. And I believe that the permanence, so we will no longer be talking about tax cuts. Once this bill becomes permanent, this will be the law of the land for the U.S., and there will be great certainty on the tax side. And then the third side is deregulation. And I think really when I look at the kingdom, when I look at the U.S., the one thing I see is great optimism and a can-do attitude. We've seen it in states, the U.S., we have a federal system, state to state. We've seen it in states like Texas, which has very much a can-do attitude. Florida, we're seeing big migrations there. And what President Trump wants to do is make the rest of the United States more like Texas and Florida, where deregulation is down, permitting time is down. You know, what's the use of saying we're going to be an AI superpower if the permitting takes 3 years? What's the use of saying we want to expand our energy dominance if you can't get pipelines through? So we are going to deregulate substantially. It is also very good for inflation for the American households, because during President Trump's first term, what really generated the non-inflationary growth was there was a demand shock from the tax bill, and from that stimulus, it was met with a supply response from deregulation. And you ended up with very strong non-inflationary growth. I think what happened under the Biden administration was you had a demand shock from government spending, And if we have time, we could come back to how we're going to get that down. But it was met with supply constriction, and that's how we got the great inflation of 21, 22, and 23. So we are really setting the stage with the trade, tax, and deregulation for what we think could be will be a very strong period of non-inflationary, strong growth.
Thank you, and thank you for plugging Texas, where I grew up, but Pennsylvania is very strong too.
Pennsylvania is on its way.
I'm going to give the last word to His Excellency. I can't believe we're already out of time. Tell us what you think are the biggest opportunities, finance and economic opportunities, job creation opportunities, both in the Kingdom and in the United States, between our two countries.
Well, this requires another 2 hours. Dina, I mean, there are a lot, to be honest, there are a lot that can be done. I think the U.S. is the envy and has been the envy of the world in terms of the entrepreneurship spirit, innovation, and technology. And you could see that in the productivity amongst possibly every country in the G20. The U.S. stands out in terms of the growth and productivity. That's an area where we are focusing on and trying to see where we can actually utilize that kind of expertise in the U.S. to fuel the Saudi economy. We have, as few international commentators said, this is possibly a very bright spot in the international. If you look at the international map in terms of where the growth is, it's a young population, it's a technology-savvy population, it's a government that is willing to move, it's a government that does not have an ego to change when they think things are not moving in the right direction, and very agile. And I think we have this common features that I think we can, from both sides, benefit from. I would encourage, seriously, I would encourage investors who are not familiar with what is happening in Saudi to actually just have that opportunity to come and visit Saudi Arabia, meet with the Saudi investors and even the young population to see how really very much positive thinking driven this population is.
Terrific. Thank you. Thank you both so much for an excellent panel and for starting off the summit so well. We're so grateful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Standing. Thank you. You guys are right there.
Dina. Hello.
Hello. Hey, Sarah.
We're excited for your next panel. I know
Thank
you're going to
you.
be speaking with some industry titans. I just wanted to welcome you over here. And while they're setting up, ask you what your impression is, because you speak to so many leaders and you're very plugged in the investment world. I'm curious how you see the evolution of the U.S.-Saudi relationship, how it's changed over time, and where you think it goes in the future.
Sure. Well, I mean, as you just heard, just a great articulation of the vision that the kingdom has. And frankly, the results speak for themselves in terms of Vision 2030. You heard Secretary Besant affirm how important the U.S.-Saudi bilateral relationship is. And I just think you're going to see that continue to grow. You know, these things take time, you know, the kind of economic, social, and political reform that we're talking about. But as we often hear, it's in the best national security interests of the United States that these reforms are implemented and that the kingdom is as strong as it can be and that it's a strong ally of ours.
And I know that's your expertise. Another fact that I took out of your conversation was His Excellency updated the labor force participation for women 36%. Back in October, I spoke with him at FII, it was 30%, so that just dramatically changed.
Well, you know, there's a lot of focus on that, and one of the things that you see when you go around the kingdom, the number of women not only working in large institutions, but as female entrepreneurs.
Well, we're excited for your next panel, and I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Sarah. Okay, I'm doing double duty. I think now our panelists are going to come out. Larry Fink, Jane Fraser, Steve Schwarzman. I think they're coming. There you are. How are you? Great to see you. Good to see you. Great to see you. Okay, moving down one. Yes. Oh, okay. At the end. I'm sorry. We're taking.
Back here as the first seat.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. It's hard to get a number of people all organized. Wow. How about this incredible panel? Thank you all so much for joining us today. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello.
How are you? It's great to see you. We started off with a pretty incredible presentation from the Secretary of Treasury and His Excellency, Finance Minister El Jaddan. And now we want to talk a little bit about how these great goals are implemented, actually implemented in the world of finance and in the business sector. Larry, I'm going to start with you, because I remember coming to the Kingdom with you in 2019. I think you had one of the BlackRock board meetings here, perhaps, and you invited a few others to come with you. And you, I would say, were one of the first leaders in finance to really see the opportunity in the Kingdom. What was it you saw? How do you think things are going, and what worries might you have or challenges?
Well, it's great to be here. Thank you. Thank you for inviting me. For somebody, I think we were talking about it over a dinner. I've been here over 65 times, over 20 years. And probably the most important characteristic change that we started witnessing around the announcement of Vision 30. So we're on 2017, and then obviously 2 years into it from 19. The Kingdom is now taking responsibility for itself. I would say 20 years ago, the Kingdom was a follower and maybe lacking self-confidence in its own self. And I think around the Vision 30 was really a statement around taking control, taking responsibility, broadening the economy from just a oil-based economy, but expanding from upstreaming and downstreaming, but then beyond, focusing on things like tourism, focusing on the expansion of its capital markets. And so it was very clear to me that the emphasis on 2030 was really a statement to the world that we're going to do it ourselves, that we're going to build our economy, and we're going to build our economy in a way that we are taking control, but importantly, an economy that will be entering then beyond the 21st century to becoming a global leader. And if you look at the details of what Vision 2030 is bringing to the Kingdom, is advancing the Kingdom to become one of the leading economies in the world. And through the execution, we could see the Kingdom being in the top 10 of the largest economies in the world. From an economy that was not even considered one of the advanced economies. And so today, now 2025, we are seeing the opportunities, not just the Kingdom being a big financier overseas, which historically most of the men and women who are coming from finance was trying to get money to take and invest overseas. Now what we are seeing is huge opportunities in investing within the Kingdom. And I think that is a great example of the transformation from an economy that was an exporter of capital. That economy still remains to be an exporter of capital, as witnessed about the amount of capital that's coming into the United States. But the Kingdom now is a great destination for capital. And all of us have now built more resilient offices here. We have investment teams who are creating products now to invest here in the Kingdom. And I do believe the opportunity for the Kingdom to expand its capital markets to become one of the leading capital markets of the world can be one of the big statements of lifting the Kingdom way beyond 2030.
Well, I'm going to get a Saudi perspective from His Excellency. I think Larry's right. There was this enormous boost of excitement, interest, but I think some of the markets within the kingdom were still growing. Capital formation, the kinds of products that actually needed to be built in order to implement some of this growth, particularly from a capital markets perspective. I think you have done a great deal of that now.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. And yes, I think the kingdom has marched through with all of these objectives. And to be in the beginning, and I think Sarah is very close to that, the stock market in Saudi Arabia was a very limited one, and now it's one of the largest. It's the seventh, I think, market. We have advanced in diversifying the economy, be it in terms of government revenues, or be it in terms of the exports, or in terms of the domestic production itself. All of these we have done. I mean, if you look at what is happening in the tourism industry, for example, a society, you remember probably when you first visited, was, relatively speaking, a closed economy. Now, tourism is huge. Women's participation rising from negligible number to 36% participation rate. So there has been a lot that has really happened. And in the world of finance, we are contributing our share, but also our economy now needs more because our ambitions are much greater than they were in the past. So we do rely on bankers and financiers, and we rely on those who develop instruments that are useful for our operations. For example, from the Islamic Development Bank perspective, where our bread and butter is basic infrastructure. We need those joint operations. We need that co-financing. I mean, we just signed a couple of months ago to participate in the Rogan Dam in Tajikistan. This is a $6 billion project, but it's going to influence the whole Central Asian region. And one lender could not have done it. We were there, the World Bank was there, the Saudi Fund for Development was there, the other Arab lending institutions were there. So it is going to happen, and it will have a huge impact on the development of that country. And I could give you many, many examples like that, where joint financing is done, where cooperation is done, and even instruments are being developed. Instruments are doing, and for example, we have the sukuk. That's our contribution to the world of finance, and I think it is. We only scratched the surface. There's a lot to be done there.
I know one of the bankers you rely on is Jane Fraser and her outstanding team at Citi. Also a long history in the kingdom. But I would say I think Citi, you under your leadership has deepened the relationship. Maybe just talk a little bit about that.
Well, it's always wonderful to be back in the kingdom, and thank you so much for the invitation to be here. It's such an exciting time at the moment because you're watching the different ecosystems develop. So having, particularly with what PIF is doing, building out, whether it's in tourism, whether it's in life sciences developing, in gaming and sports, as well as obviously AI, which is opening up so many opportunities. And the piece building on what Larry was talking about, which I think is so wonderful, but also quite remarkable of what the kingdom's done, is this is now mutually beneficial relationship. This isn't the US coming in saying to Saudi what the advice is and what to do. This is about trying to support a partner, but equally a partner supporting the US back home as well. And the different areas that we're seeing is starting to bring new forms of monetization, the securitization market getting built out. I can imagine a next step will be building out a treasury center here. How do we begin deepening and further scaling the capital market, following on the success that you were talking about in the local equity market? So for all of us, it's not just a case of seeing Saudi getting to its rightful place in the global economy, but it's seeing the economy here leading in many of these new ecosystems. And in that sense, I think the innovation is there to be watched, because here is where it's happening.
Definitely. In 2018, Steve Schwarzman was here during that summit. And actually, Blackstone announced a very significant partnership with the kingdom, a $20 billion infrastructure fund. And you've also been coming to the kingdom for a long, long time. Give us an update on that initiative. And maybe, because I'm going to give you a tough one, Steve, what challenges do you think we need to be careful of?
Well, I've been coming to the kingdom since 1991. So some of you were not born yet. And when I came the first time, it was really an adventure for me. There weren't many U.S. financial people even attempting to come here. Since that time, Riyadh has grown at least 8 times in size. On my first trip, I think about half of the roads were dirt roads. And now you come to Riyadh, it's like a revolution. Everything is new. Everything is modern. When I went to a dinner party, which I normally do when I come here, usually about 40, 50 participants, and at one of the dinners, the person who was in charge of the dinner, hit his glass and said, "How many of you attending grew up without either running water or electricity?" And about 60% of the hands went up. At the same time, we were sitting at a table where CNBC was on video. It was like astonishing. So the progress that I have seen in my professional life at the kingdom is like unbelievable. And I was on stage when, with the Crown Prince, there were like 3 of us, when he announced the initiative 2030 and all the things that he was thinking about. It was one of the most ambitious projects I'd ever heard of, could imagine. And I said on the stage at that time, you're going to accomplish a lot of these things, but like all great visions, some of them won't quite happen, and you can't get discouraged about that, because that's the nature of major change. And I've watched what's happened since that time, and it's really remarkable how the kingdom has changed. And for those who are attending, most of you aren't aware of that because it's happening to you. But for those who will come a few times a year, we can see these huge changes.
Yep. Sarah definitely was not born in 1991. And how impressive is it that she is the head of Tadawul, and frankly that it has grown so much under your leadership, very nascent, very difficult, choppy waters. You have not only created the market here, you have really made it the 7th largest exchange in the world.
Thank you, Dina. I think I'm very proud to say, with continuous excitement, that now in 2025, 7, 8 years into Vision 2030, that this vision has turned Saudi Arabia to a reliable, investable destination. And this is proven by numbers, and I think this is just the beginning. And that is through all the efforts that was been done under the leadership of the kingdom with the vision and with the financial sector development program and everyone working in the capital market to actually create a market that is globally integrated, that is open and trustworthy. And that only happened with public-private partnerships. All the reform and regulation was met with serious innovation, whether from the Saudi participant or also many of the international participants, particularly U.S. banks. I can mention Larry here, BlackRock, actually one of the first to launch ETFs. Franklin Templeton, Jenny, also launched a bond fund and ETF last year. I know also Citigroup has just signed also with PIF a new private credit, I think, fund to invest in Saudi and many others. All this as well happened with a lot of partnership with international partners, but particularly since we are in the Saudi-U.S. Investment Forum, I would like to mention a few examples of a very old relationship. One of them, if we talk about capital market infrastructure, our systems is a partnership between us and NASDAQ that goes more than 20 years back. And now we're working together on upgrading those systems. We have a very advanced stock exchange that was successful in listing the largest listing of Aramco in 2019, where many, I think, and that proven the seriousness of our stock exchange and that we are at a playing level field with the rest of international stock markets, which also led us to be one of the 10th largest exchanges in the world. Sometimes we're the 10th, sometimes we're the 9th, depending on the day and what you look at.
You got promoted to 7 today.
Maybe we reached the 7th at a point in time, but I think the latest data, I think we're the 10th or 9th. And in terms of foreign ownership in the market, it was a journey that started from 2015, but was actually accelerated in 2017. Many partners here also with me on stage were part of this. We worked very closely with investors, BlackRock one of them, to actually work with the indices to convince the international community that to be included in the market in the global indices like MSCI, S&P, FTSE, and others, and be part of the global markets. As a result, from zero QFIs in 2015, 2017 was the launch. Today we have more than 4,000. And I can say that almost 55% of foreign investment through QFI program in our market is US-based. Mm-hmm. And this also demonstrated the deepness of this relationship.
It really does. I was with His Excellency Minister Al-Farah and Jenny Johnson in LA last week, and he really praised you, your leadership, what Franklin Templeton has done, particularly in the last few years, to double down on your investment here. And I think Sarah describes one of the ways you've done that. What's the rest of kind of the Franklin Templeton investment here in the kingdom?
Well, first of all, I was thinking, my first time coming in the kingdom was in 2020, and I've probably been here, I don't know, 15 times. So Larry, even though you're 65, I feel like I'm catching up on pace. So actually, Franklin Templeton's been in the region for 25 years, and we acquired a company in 2007 that does local equity and fixed income in the region, and so have a pretty big Islamic finance practice. And so actually just last month, we launched a Sukuk private credit. We have a Sharia technology fund. And so not only do we have capabilities, I think, from a global standpoint, but also local. And I think that's really important because part of the opportunity is being able to structure products, and I know that's something that we focus a lot on, that really provide financial inclusion. And so being able to bring in global products but with kind of a local flavor is important. We opened an office here 2 years ago. We have investment folks in that office, so it's not just a kind of a servicing office, but is a local investment office. And then I would just say that to Larry's point about the kingdom, first of all, I did bring my executive committee here, and they are global investors, and they were shocked by the pace of change. And of course, I looked at them and said, your job is to actually see these things in advance, but you have to be here because honestly, people's view is like they've never seen a country evolve so and transform so dramatically, so quickly. But to the point that Larry was making around the investment, we used to always come here because you wanted to find dollars to invest outside, and now it's about, with 50% of the economy non-oil, it's about the great opportunities inside the country that gets really interesting.
And it's also obviously been a pretty stable time from a global markets perspective. And so I'm going to come back to Larry. You heard Secretary Bessent kind of articulate the economic agenda that President Trump is trying to implement. After Geneva, what did he call it? The Geneva mechanism. The markets went wild and have, I think, continued to stay strong today or overnight. What are you worried about volatility? What are you worried about in the next 90 days and beyond? And I want each of you to think about it from your perspective.
Well, I really don't care about the next 90 days. But let me be clear. The markets are fine. Great opportunity to be long-term investors. Yes, there's going to be a lot of volatility until we have greater certainty as to what is the new equilibrium. And we're learning that the equilibrium is probably sooner than we thought maybe 2-3 weeks ago.
Can you define equilibrium?
Well, I think equilibrium is, we know world order. We understand what the U.S. is trying to do in terms of trying to reorder how trade is being done. And I think once we have that certainty, the markets need certainty, I think you're going to have some of the, well, in Europe, there's $12 trillion of money sitting in bank accounts in Europe. In the United States, there's $11 trillion sitting in money market funds. When there is that uncertainty, you're going to keep more and more money in cash, and that's what we've witnessed. In addition, because of the uncertainty and maybe an over-optimism about the United States, we've seen modest reallocation out of the United States into other economies, especially Europe. But we still see global investors overweighting the U.S. And overall, most investors are still underweighted Europe, but less underweighted today. I think one of the key characteristics is going to see, are we going to start seeing more and more money coming into this region over time, money going back into Asia, India, Japan. But I think we are going to be in a period of uncertainty, and we are going to have to start focusing on the role of deficits, which are not part of any conversation. And let's be clear, the U.S. deficits are an issue. The U.S., and as I wrote in an editorial on Election Day in the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. economy needs a 3% growth rate to overcome its deficits. And I do believe what President Trump is trying to do, I believe consistent with what the kingdom is trying to do, they're trying to create more public-private investing. And I think that'll be the characteristic that we're all going to be watching. So yes, we're going to have volatility in the next 90 days, but the big thing that I'll be watching, are we going to be able to see in every economy the opportunity for more active private investments? What I'm afraid of, we've relied too much here in the kingdom and in the United States, too much public investments. The vitality of any economy is based on private investing in the long run. That's what we all should be watching.
Well, Mr. Chairman, you have a unique vantage point as chair of the Islamic Development Bank, which in many ways is definitionally public and private. How has volatility impacted the bank?
Not too much, but it has affected us in the sense that our partners in development are reconsidering because of the availability of funding, because of the concerns about the long-term sustainability of the programs that we've had for a while. For example, USAID has been a great partner in many of the things that were done. Now, what is going to happen is something else going to replace it. We also talk to our partners in the various 57 member countries, and they are asking us, is the dollar going to continue to be the currency that the Islamic Development Bank will use? And we say, yes, it will be. But the fact that they ask this question makes us worry. We need that predictability. We need that certainty. We need that calmness that we have had for a long time and should continue with us for the future, because too many unknowns make it more difficult to plan. And our business, as I said, is basic infrastructure. That's a long-term investment.
Definitely long-term.
And it needs all that long-term certainty, at least predictability. Uncertainty we can deal with. Unpredictability is the problem.
And Sarah, are you seeing that too?
Yes, of course. We're part of the global markets, and we are affected by volatility as well. Maybe our market is a little bit, in the past month or so, a little bit less volatile than others. However, certainty is important, but also volatility creates opportunities sometimes. So for us, that's just the nature of our business.
So I want to make sure on this point to hear from Steve and Jane and Jenny. Steve, just recently I heard you say exactly what Sarah just said. This is sometime with volatility comes opportunity, and it's when Blackstone pounces. So what are the areas that you see that could become opportunities? I know data centers, of course, has always been in your portfolio. I think you're the largest infrastructure data center investor.
Right. Well, I guess two things. First, to finish up the question you asked the first time when we got $20 billion, how have we done? I wasn't trying to avoid that question. We've earned 17.5% compound. When we set up the deal with our friends at PIF, we were expecting to get 8-9% normal infrastructure types of returns. So we made a mistake. We're close to 100% over what we expected. So we have a lot of happy friends, and we're very pleased with what we've done. In terms of what we're looking at now, as major themes, there are two things in there interrelated. One is in the data center world. At Blackstone, we're the #1 developer of data centers in the world and the #1 owner of data centers. And what happens when you create data centers, principally for AI, although also for the cloud, they make enormous demands on the electric grid, electric system. And in the developed world, we're in danger of running out of electricity. I know that sounds a little, hyperbolic. That may change as semiconductors become much more efficient. But in today's world, if you were to straight line it, you'd be really browning out in a lot of places in 5 years is sort of the projection. And so this provides enormous opportunities globally to deploy money at what will be much higher than traditional kinds of returns. whether it's for utilities or all the equipment that you need. Because in the United States, for example, there was no growth basically in electricity over a 20-year period. Now we're moving into a world where it looks like it's 3.5% to 4% growth. So that anything you buy that was priced for a no-growth world will become worth much more money as you go into a growth business.
Jane, you're equally optimistic, and certainly, as I said earlier, the families and founders that we work with are wondering, is this the opportunity? And what regions and what industries, particularly families and founders?
Yes. So for the families and founders, I think there's a quite remarkable opportunity, because in volatility is the opportunity for those who get on the front foot and seize the moment. Here in the kingdom, as we've talked about, there are a lot of domestic opportunities. We're now in an era of more of national self-interest than the big global focus has been. Our encouragement would be, look at where are the new emerging industries that are coming through, the innovation that's happening in the life sciences space, what's happening in gaming, unleashing the female entrepreneur. I think we're already seeing some of the opportunities that are happening here in the kingdom from that. And I would say keep going, ladies, on that front.
Jenny, can you close us out? And also the voice of the retail investor, if you will. What is volatility? How is volatility impacting?
I'll say three things. One is, look, it is difficult to have a good risk-adjusted portfolio in times of market concentration like you have with Magnificent Seven, right? And so whenever there's volatility, there's a reset, and that's when active management, I think, thrives. So that's number one. Number two, in the alternative space, permanent capital in times like this is a really good thing. If you're in a project, you have the ability, people don't run for the hills, they stick invested. And then the third, because there's been so much money invested in permanent capital, I'm a big believer in secondaries private equity, because there's so many who need liquidity, and it's a great time to be in that space.
Definitely. Well, again, too short of a time. You all were terrific. Thank you so much for your perspectives. And can we give our panel a round of applause, please? Thank you. Great job.
Thank you very much. So good to see you.
So
Thank you, Dina. Well, as you just heard, a healthy financial system as well as a supportive government are the underpinnings for a vibrant and game-changing technology sector. This is the exciting part where we get to talk AI. It's a major discussion point between our two countries right now, our AI future, and the imperative of technology and AI for growth, for security, for our shared aspiration for leadership. I just want to read for you a few headlines just to set the stage for our next conversation. So just in the last few months, Qualcomm and Aramco Digital introduced the world's first 5G AI-enabled industrial smartphone. Google's new AI hub in Saudi Arabia aims to add $71 billion to the local economy. Riyadh Air and IBM forge AI-driven partnership to revolutionize aviation. And Saudi Arabia's NEOM signs a $5 billion deal for AI center with Data Vault. You're going to hear from some of these leaders a little bit later on, but just to set the stage as far as what the government can do to help foster this kind of game-changing innovation, I'd like to welcome our two next guests, His Excellency Engineer Abdullah Al-Swaha, Minister of Communications and Information Technology for Saudi Arabia, and David Sachs, White House AI and Crypto Czar.
now I'm sure we can give David Sachs, the czar of AI and crypto, for the President of the United States, a better welcome than that. Can we get a bigger room? There you go, there you go, there you go. So David, thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me. You've just been an incredible host, my friend, and it's been really incredible to see your country. You gave me the most incredible tour of the high-tech sector of Saudi Arabia yesterday, and it's truly impressive what your country is doing to create opportunities for entrepreneurs. I'd say including and especially women. I was very impressed to meet a number of female entrepreneurs yesterday at the garage at your startup incubator. So it's been very impressive to see.
You're too kind. What a wonderful introduction. So David, yesterday, Your Excellency, we had the absolute wonderful opportunity to cement the partnership, more than 90 years of a relationship, a strategic alliance between the U.S. and Saudi Arabia and the U.S., to move and foster from an energy-based economy. Today we fuel roughly 20% of the global mix, moving to the digital economy, and you just have recognized our women empowerment in tech, 36%. Can we get a big round of applause for all the amazing women fueling our digital economy and being named #1, #2 consecutively by ITU, the World Bank, the World Economic Forum? Fast forward to the intelligent age. The intelligent age, yesterday, we showed you how we're leveraging our energy, our capital, our land, captive market to push activation, acceleration, and adoption. The lowest price point for training, inference, and some of the world-leading examples in generative AI, in healthcare, sickle cell disease, agentic AI, transforming both the wonderful PIF portfolio and our government efficiency, and adoption led by Aramco with their Meta Brain, the corrosion. Tell me about your reflections.
Well, when we were doing the tour yesterday of the startup garage, one of the things that we saw, which wasn't, I think, planned or on the tour, is we saw a whiteboard that someone had drawn a diagram for Model Context Protocol, or MCP. I don't know if people here know what MCP is, but it's catching fire in the world of AI, and it showed that your founders and entrepreneurs are really on the cutting edge of what's happening with AI. MCP is a new standard that allows agents to talk to existing SaaS applications or any kind of application, and it's really going to enable this agentic future that I think is the next big wave in AI. So the fact that someone had was scribbling that on a whiteboard showed me that.
Trust me, that wasn't planted there or orchestrated. That was organic. It shows you the depth and the breadth of the technical capacity that we have, led by our youth and women.
Yes, and I could tell that there's a founder who is building an AI agent there who's really on the cutting edge. And I think this is the kind of thing we need to enable and to want to support. The thing that I've learned in Silicon Valley over the past 25 years is that every successful company in Silicon Valley gets to be that way by creating an ecosystem. And the most powerful companies in tech are the ones that create the biggest ecosystem. In fact, they do that by creating a standard. They want everyone to build on top of them. They create app stores, things like that. In fact, they're able to build these ecosystems without even having any lawyers involved. There's no need for a contract. You just publish an API and people will build. And I think in a similar way, the United States needs to encourage the world to build on our tech stack. You know, the first week that I became AI czar for President Trump.
I love that, AI czar.
It's a big title to live up to sometimes. But the president challenged us and he tasked us. He said, we have to win the AI race. The United States has to win the AI race. And every day I think about...
Win with the kingdom.
Well, I'm about to get there. And I think about how is it that we do that? How do we win the AI race? And the answer is that we have to build the biggest partner ecosystem. We need our friends like the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia and other strategic partners and allies to want to build on our tech. And yet, over the past few years, that's been the opposite of the approach in Washington. The Trump administration just announced that we'd be rescinding what's known as the Biden diffusion rule, which was a rule that came out in January.
Can we get a thank you? Because it's about diffusion, adoption.
Yes, the Biden diffusion rule came out in January, and it literally restricted the diffusion or proliferation of American technology all over the world. Now, the original reason for this diffusion rule is that we have a policy of not wanting our advanced semiconductors to go to what are known as countries of concern. But there's only a very, very small number of those countries. And really, we're talking about, America's central competitors in the world. It was never intended to capture friends, allies, strategic partners. And yet, out of this, I think, desire to try and prevent diffusion, what Washington sought to do was create a regime restricting the transfer of data centers, of data center technology. Now, imagine if, let's take this. Imagine if Washington had created a diffusion rule for the iPhone because it was worried about bad guys somehow getting a hold of iPhones, and every iPhone transaction had to be licensed in Washington. This technology would not have spread all over the world. And the diffusion of iPhones is a very good thing for the United States of America. I think in a similar way, we want our technology to diffuse or to spread. We want people to use it. We want to become the standard. And I think that in Washington, that mentality has, I think, been sorely lacking over the past few years, but we're going to bring it back.
Well, this is a general purpose technology, and you can't leave people behind.
Yes.
Folks are going to get these chips a way or another, but you need to make sure that there are safeguards and guardrails to make sure that there is no technological diversion. And if I take the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, we've had your mainframe, for example, back then it used to be called the supercomputer, since 1947 in Aramco, and they had protocols on how to protect it, diversion to any specific nation. And I couldn't agree with you more, my dear friend. It's all about the diffusion. This is how you create stickiness with your clients, with your partners, how you can create success, and how can you scale up this trillion-dollar business, soon to be multiple of $1 trillion.
Let me speak to that risk of diversion for a second. So you're absolutely right. It's not an issue with a friend like Saudi Arabia at all.
Thank you.
But I think that in general, I think that there's a great deal of misunderstanding about the diversion of GPUs. People tend to think that these things are like diamonds that can fit in a briefcase or something like that. That's an antiquated understanding now of the type of technology we're talking about. What we're really talking about here are servers that incorporate GPUs, and in fact, we're talking about server racks. The latest NVIDIA product called NVL72 is a server cabinet that contains 72 super chips. It's stacked 8 feet high and weighs 3,600 pounds. Okay, this is not something that can be smuggled in a briefcase. And the truth is that you need thousands of these things to create a supercluster that could be a national security threat to the United States. So the policy objective of preventing diversion to countries of concerns is an absolutely important objective of the United States, but it is not a difficult one to achieve. The truth of the matter is that all one would have to do is send someone to a data center and count the server racks to make sure that the chips are still there. And so we act like this is something where we need to shut down every data center in the world unless it specifically goes through Washington. This is not the case. We can manage this problem of diversion without stopping the diffusion of American technology.
Well, David, you've seen it yesterday, how U.S. technologies have helped us deliver a passport within 5 minutes. You said to me, we're going to soon see that in other economies as well. How you could renew your license, how you could do all of your different digital services in a cashless society as well, from the digital age and in the intelligent age. We've showed you firsthand how we're creating nanorobots with CRISPR technology, leveraging generative AI to tackle sickle cell disease, bad cholesterol, have targeted gene therapy, which is remarkable, reducing the cost to treat a patient from $2.2 million to just sub $100,000. Think about the remarkable work that we're doing in agentic AI, helping Aramco energize the world, which we need to fuel the U.S. ambition and Saudi's ambition in AI training and inference, because we're going to converge not only to the price point of electronics, but it's really the price points of electrons. In the kingdom today, in renewable, in the last bid, we had a single cents per kilowatt hour at generation. We continue to push the needle on the lowest price point per million token, input and output. We've just released it in Dammam, which is quite remarkable. And we're pushing also on physical AI with the first fully robotics heart transplant. So you're seeing it in essence that you're joining hands with a reliable partner that is all about the great good of diffusion and adoption of these technologies for the greater good of the people, planet, and prosperity. My good friend, we could not be more proud of our partnership. And as we say in Saudi, once we partner for a lifetime.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Give it to David Sachs, please.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much. Great conversation. One thing that I took away from David's comment that I think helps set the scene for our next conversation is we need to build on the U.S.'s tech stack. And that's been one of the messages from this administration, really, when it comes to a number of matters. America First is not America alone, and so there is ample room for partnerships, and we've already seen that blossom in the world of technology and AI. And that's what the next conversation is going to focus on. What role do U.S. companies play? You're going to hear from semiconductors, hyperscalers, an investor on what they look for in a partnership between companies in our technology industry. I think some of the key questions: what can the government do to help foster this innovation? Another key question out there is, how do you evaluate your partnerships from a sovereign perspective and then also from a private sector perspective? I'd like to welcome our next panelist to the stage. Please welcome Alex Karp, the co-founder and CEO of Palantir; Arvind Krishna, CEO and chairman of IBM; Ruth Porat, President and Chief Investment Officer of Alphabet and Google; Ahmed Al-Khwader, EVP of Technology and Innovation at Saudi Aramco; Cristiano Amon, the CEO of Qualcomm; Rajit Nanda, the CEO of DataVolt; Marcelo Clare, the founder of the Clare Group, and I am going to join them right in the middle of this very robust panel. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you. So thank you all for being here. I think it's a real testament to some of the excitement around AI here in the kingdom and some of the partnerships that you are announcing, have already announced. Cristiano, I'll start with you because you have one with our friend here at Aramco, and I think are announcing more, but are not ready to talk about that yet. But just tell us what attracted you to the kingdom and how it's working out.
Look, one of the things we're really excited. I think we're at a stage at the industry. We spend a lot of time creating AI. Now AI is going to production. And the applications really on industry is incredible. So one of the things we're doing over Aramco as a leader in oil and gas is really how to use AI at the edge, connecting all of their assets with intelligence, with connectivity, with AI. And I think this has been really transformative when you think about industry. And the next step is really physical AI, understanding of the physical world. That's a lot of application, robotics. I think we're just at the beginning, and I think the opportunities in the kingdom is really tremendous.
So, I mean, Ahmed, as the Aramco technology chief, I wonder what you look for. You have partnerships not just with Qualcomm, with AMD, with Grok, with so many tech companies. Yeah. What do you look for, and how is Aramco becoming an AI company? We think of it as a global oil producer.
True. So, I mean, everybody's going to become an AI company. The world is being transformed by AI. And what we look for in partners is those with really scale, the capability to scale, and the capability and the real deep technical knowledge. So a lot of what's happening now is the value from AI. The real, I think, challenging value is how to get the physical world and create improvement and value from that. And that's where we are focused. We have tremendous amounts of data, 10 billion data points from our facilities around the world every day. And that data, that physical data, is what we are really delivering to our partners to be able to create models that can really create true value from and actually have impact in the business. And so that's where I think we're different. We also have, I think, the physical knowledge, the real scientific knowledge to put that data to use. That's where we look for partners with those kind of depth and scale.
Ruth, I mentioned earlier the big Google announcement a few months ago to build basically an AI center and add $71 billion to the economy here. How's that going?
Well, it's going well. Building off of the prior comments, we've been invested in the kingdom for quite some time and really started to build up our cloud and AI capabilities back in 2021. Very proud of the work that we're doing with Aramco. And as we sit here at this moment in history where there's such extraordinary upside from AI, economic upsides, delivery of healthcare, education, breakthroughs in science, cyber, we looked at how could we expand in support of Vision 2030 and started with the idea of just a data center, and then, to your point, said, let's take a full stack approach and let's focus on how can we maximize the economic and social benefit to the kingdom. And so what we're doing is building out data centers. It's bringing GPUs and proprietary Google TPUs here. It's about the Gemini model, Google's most advanced AI model, Gemini, that's now in 16 Arabic dialects. It's the ability to unlock that so that we can truly help in the kingdom and outside of the kingdom to deliver on the promise of what is AI, and very importantly, this notion of concentric circles. It's not just serving customers in the kingdom, but what are the geographic concentric circles out that want to bring their work here. And importantly to it, in discussions with PIF and now with Humane, the goal is let's make sure that we're also focused on human capital investment, not just technical infrastructure investment. And so what is it that we can do across the suite of education that helps people prepare for what this new set of opportunities is, from the earliest years all the way through to job skilling. So we're very excited about the holistic, what we're calling Global AI Hub, and the work that we've been doing most recently with Humane, started with PIF to be able to deliver it, and we're motoring through.
Yeah, we're going to hear a lot more about Humane later in the day. Arvind, you also have a AI hub here, I believe, and are hiring a lot of local talent. What are you finding?
Look, first, we are committed to the economic development, and that is mutual between the Saudi and the U.S. And we heard a lot of comments on that earlier from the Secretary and His Excellency, the Minister of Finance. We are very proud. Our relationship with Aramco actually goes back almost 80 years. Both of us did mutual benefits to help Aramco grow in the beginning, and certainly that was a benefit to us also. We are one of the unique ones who decided to set up R&D here in the kingdom. So it's not just a deployment hub, it's R&D. And about 80% of the talent is actually sourced locally for R&D. So we're helping build AI that actually we take globally from here. In addition, we are committing to skill 1 million Saudis on AI and technology. That's not by ourselves, let me be clear. That'll be in conjunction with Sadaya and with others in the kingdom. And we are very, very excited about what we can do, to some of the points Ahmed just said, about leveraging some of that knowledge and that data, but to help monetize it then globally. More on that to come.
Alex, I've heard you say before that the countries utilizing AI the best right now, its fullest potential, are the U.S. and in the Middle East. So I wondered if you could expand on that and relate it to what we're seeing here in the kingdom.
Well, I'm delighted to be here. I've been coming here for a long time, and it's a country of very warm, decent, highly competent people, and it's on fire. And you know, when I got here this time, I sat down with, we hire basically our 22-year-old engineers. They look like 16, and I asked them, well, you know, what's going on here? And they were like, our counterparties are very strong, and they're very patriotic, which we like. It's very hard to organize things in cultures with no end goal. And so what you're seeing on the ground, if you're looking at actual value creation in the physical world that can be quantified, i.e. AI that's not a joke, you're seeing a receptivity in this region, especially in the kingdom, but the receptivity is on the back of people who have a deep tradition in engineering excellence and, quite frankly, believe in their own future. And so obviously the great contradistinction here is Europe, where you know, it's like people have given up. And I really hope that turns around in Europe. But for now, what you're seeing is and an openness to new ways of doing things, meritocracy. You know, this people underestimate, if you want to do engineering meritocracy, you're much better off here than almost any place in the world. And that ethos and that competence is going to lead to a massive outperformance. And in part because people don't have it, really underestimate what's going to happen here. And so I mean, I'm very enthusiastic, and I also kind of like the people here, so that helps.
It's a cultural fit for you. I like the jab at Europe as well. Rajit, how are you building the infrastructure in the country to do this?
Yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Look, at Data Vault, what we are doing as a Saudi company is primarily leveraging of what the kingdom has to offer in terms of building this critical infrastructure at scale, at pace, and at the lowest cost of compute. What we need to recognize that the whole AI boom will lead to the convergence of the price of energy with the price of compute. And the beauty of the kingdom is it has already established itself as the green capital of the world. And energy is produced at the lowest cost, especially renewable energy. And at Oxagon in NEOM, what we are doing is we are building the world's largest AI factory, a 1.5 gigawatt factory, AI factory, the first phase of which is commencing construction in a couple of months from now, $5 billion. And we basically are positioning the kingdom going forward to become the inference capital of the world. And the speed and the pace and the political will, all of them converge to make this reality happen. So I think the socio-economic transformation that the kingdom has been seeing for the last 9 years is now translating into what I call the digital transformation, making it the digital hub of the world in years to come. Thank you.
Marcelo, you also have deep roots here, back to SoftBank days, and now you're on the investing side. Well, you've always been on the investing side of it, but how do you evaluate some of these partnerships and opportunities when you're looking at a market like Saudi Arabia?
So I come from the other side, not from the technology side, and what we've been focused is how can we grab incumbent and actually apply AI to generate most of the value. And the way we look at the world is quite simple, right? We think AI is by far the largest opportunity to create value in our history. Thank God there's so many companies who are investing hundreds of billions of dollars, what I like to say, create the AI factory. And then it's up to us to grab that and apply it to real-life companies. And one of the use cases that I'm focused on is, as you know, I'm the largest independent shareholder of T-Mobile, and we've been able to, I would say, pretty much start transforming the company, and we're publicly said that we will increase profitability by $10 billion from 2023 to 2027. And the magnitude of this is it took us over 120 years of the United companies to make $30 billion, and in 3 years we should be able to grow that by basically eliminating all customer service, eliminating most of our stores, building our network differently with some partnerships we have in NVIDIA, and the partnership with OpenAI. Now, what do I like about this is now we build a center of excellence that's capable of replicating that in other companies, and we're in advanced discussions of a lot of the large enterprises in the kingdom of how can we help them become more efficient.
In the few minutes that we have left, I want to do a lightning round because we have such good leaders here on technology. So if you could do a brief, what excites you the most about AI right now? A use case, something you're seeing technologically. Ruth, go for it.
I would say AlphaFold. My colleagues Demis Hassabis and John Jumper won the Nobel Prize for this in the fall. It is predicting protein structure for all known proteins on the planet. Single biggest contribution to drug discoveries, the way it's described. And since I was here for FII in the fall, Demis has already come out and said we expect we'll see an AI drug in front of the FDA in the near term. So the pace of change is extraordinary. What it means for all of us is extraordinary. And I think it's also a model for how audaciously we should all think about the opportunity with AI.
Rajit?
I would say the geoeconomics of what the kingdom has to offer to the entire technology super cycle that we are about to embrace. This is the biggest opportunity. This is the biggest point of excitement.
Arvind?
AI applied to programming. You're going to find programmers are going to become twice as productive, which means there will be more of them, not fewer of them.
Said from a programmer himself.
Yes.
Alex?
It's a very unfair revolution, and there are going to be massive winners, and making sure the winners are the good people and the losers aren't.
That's what excites you.
No.
Marcella?
To me, healthcare, I look at AI as the great equalizer. In the US, we have a company called K-Health that serves as a primary care physician, basically diagnosing and prescribing patients. So my big dream is, imagine grabbing that app and send it to emerging countries so everybody can have the same quality of health that we have in countries like the US, all over the world, through an app. And because today, when you go to a lot of our countries, people go to a pharmacy, and the pharmacist is like the doctor trying to prescribe. And I think this would change the way healthcare is delivered in emerging markets, and to me, it's the great equalizer.
Cristiano?
So I won't pick a particular industry, but one thing that we're incredibly excited about AI. When we think about personal computing, every generation of change in the human-computer interaction drove a phenomenal change, from the initial keyboard to mouse to touch. One thing that AI is doing right now, as computers now understand human language, is fundamentally change how we interact with any computer, and I think we're very excited about that change that is coming.
Ahmed?
Yeah, I think the things that excite me the most are kind of in the research area. So the ability to do, discovery, and AlphaFold is a perfect example, but I'm talking about maybe, for example, the physical chemistry world. Material discovery. There's just so many possibilities of taking all the science and knowledge of humanity and accelerating that experimentation process, which we're going to be able to do today. I mean, we are already finding huge results. AlphaFold is a great example. In the physical chemistry world, we're also working on things. And as we bring robotics into this and embody AI, then that last bottleneck of taking the AI to the real world is going to accelerate discovery and the change of this world.
I'm going to do one more lightning one because you're all here, and I think everyone's very interested to hear from you. The one thing you would watch out for or be concerned about as we dive into the AI future is what, Alex?
It's very dangerous, and if the dangerous bad people get the upper hand, which is possible because a lot of it all looks the same, and some of it's a joke, and some of it's not, and some of it's deadly. We will have a world that is not the one we want, and it's not inherently good. That's where I basically disagree with most people, even on the panel. It is good in the hands of good people. It's not inherently good. It's a dangerous weapon.
Is it in the hands of good people?
Well, it will be.
Okay. You. Arvind?
Keep innovation open. You don't want to confine all the victories to only a few players.
Rajiv?
Under-regulation versus over-regulation, which is a little bit building on what Arvind just mentioned. If you want to foster and stimulate innovation, you have to play that balancing game very, very rightly between under-regulation and over-regulation.
Where are we right now?
I think different parts of the world have a different situation. I think US is a little bit under-regulated. EU for sure is heavily over-regulated at this point of time, but okay, at some point the twain will meet.
Ruth?
I actually think there's an interrelationship between these 2 points, because I very much agree with Alex. The phrase we use at Google, consistency, is it is imperative to be bold and responsible. We must protect from the downside in order to have the right and the opportunity to focus on the upside and deliver. And the only way to address some of the biggest social inequities and to deliver solutions, I think, is with AI, but you've got to protect on the downside. The risk if we over-regulate is that those who aren't regulated can get ahead, and in particular areas like cybersecurity, which many of us on this panel are focused on. It needs to similarly be a responsible approach to regulation, so we're not restraining it too much in order to protect against this downside risk. And I think Alex is very much right. It's something that we need to collectively stay vigilant about.
Ahmed, what worries you?
I mean, I agree with Alex and all that there is potential. Like we've been here before. There's been many other technologies which have been at the same kind of position. Maybe different. I don't know. But I think democratization is the solution. Really, the availability to all really does prevent the misuse by some. Because it really, it means that there's potential others will have similar capabilities. So I think the open source is a fantastic solution. It opens everybody's eyes. There's transparency, and that's where I think we need to go.
Cristiano.
I think I agree with him on the solution. I think one of the things we need to make sure happens is so impactful to so many industries. We need to make sure that every industry has the opportunity to innovate and use AI.
Well, that's also good for your business. Marcelo, what worries you?
Worries me that there's not enough people or companies who truly understand the power of AI, and if they don't act, they will disappear or they will stay behind. So it's a great opportunity for the leaders who adopt it, and there will be so many who are just doing use cases, who are doing proof of concepts, and they will stay behind, and some companies will disappear.
But we're all AI optimists on the stage, right? I don't know about you. Would you call yourself an AI optimist?
Realist.
Realist. Everybody else is an AI optimist because it relates to their business and the economy. Thank you all very much for a great session. We got a lot in a short amount of time. We appreciate it.
Great stuff.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, I just want to welcome for our next panel. Nasser Al-Tibi is with us. He's a senior presenter at Al Arabiya to talk about resilient supply chains, which is an issue that is very much related to the issue we were just talking about with technology, very much related to the issue of finance, something we learned about post-COVID, about how resilient our supply chains are and how to build supply chains so that they are resilient, so they offer security, so that they can keep up with the economy and with the population. So please welcome Nasser Al-Tibi to the stage.
Good morning. Thank you, Sarah, for the introduction. Good morning to you all, ladies and gentlemen. Global manufacturing, as it goes a rapid transformation, the need for agile, tech-enabled, and sustainable supply chains has never been more urgent nor more strategic. Today, Saudi Arabia and the United States stand at the forefront of this shift, not just as trading partners, but as co-creators of the next generation industrial ecosystems. From AI-driven production to green materials to precision engineering to localized logistics, we are witnessing, ladies and gentlemen, a redefinition of how goods are designed, made, and moved. This session brings together some of the companies leading this transformation, companies that sit at the intersection of innovation, energy, manufacturing, and mobility. Together, we'll explore how their supply chain strategies are enabling agility and scale, and where Saudi-U.S. collaboration can unlock new frontiers of competitiveness. Let me first start by introducing to you our esteemed panelists, Sabah Al-Mutlaq, co-founder and vice chairman of Al-Fanar Group, Jim DeLuca, the CEO of Sear, Jerry Todd, head of National Development Division at the PIF, and Ken West, president and CEO of Honeywell Energy and Sustainability Solutions, and last but not least, Mark Winterhoff, the interim CEO of Lucid. Gentlemen, welcome. And let me start with this. I think this probably is the main question here. Global supply chains have undergone major shocks in the last 5 years or so. Started off by the pandemic, You know, we've seen natural disasters, wars, accidents in main waterways, trade disputes, geostrategic tensions. This has necessitated a reshuffling of supply chains. What lessons from these recent global disruptions are informing your current strategies in constructing adaptable supply chains? Let me start with you, Jerry.
Thank you, Nasser. A lot has happened, and I think the development of those has confirmed, excuse me, the underpinnings of Vision 2030. If you think about what's happening in the economy today, there are three big things. The first is the industrialization of the economy, so replacing the import bill with local manufacturing. The second is building out the service economy at scale, so delivering the things people need, the experiences they need in country, rather than having people hop on a plane and go receive those somewhere else. And then the third is capturing the green shoring opportunity, so making sure that Saudi becomes a part of the global manufacturing footprint, leveraging the fact that we'll be one of the few places with long-term supplies of green energy that industry needs. And so for the first and third of those, industrialization and green shoring, building out domestic manufacturing capacity, deep local tech-enabled supply chains is really essential to that. So the volatility that's been happening confirms the need and the importance of doing that, but also the opportunity. And the fact that supply chains are at play today has accelerated a lot of the conversations that we've been happening with global partners. And what it means for U.S. companies is this annual procurement relationship with Saudi as a destination for exports will be turning into a much deeper relationship as U.S. companies come set up manufacturing here and become a permanent part of the fabric of the local economic ecosystem.
Jim, your thoughts on this?
Let me start first by saying what an honor it is to be here representing both the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, as this is where I live and work, and the United States, as I am a citizen and have a home in metropolitan Detroit. The other thing I want to preface is that I've got 46 years in the automotive industry. I've lived and worked in countries around the world, and I can tell you there is nothing like what is going on here in the Kingdom. Sear National Automotive Company is part of Vision 2030, and we like to say we're not just starting a car company, we are igniting an industry. Now, when it comes to the supply chain, I don't want to oversimplify things, but the nature of the business really dictates what you do and how you do it. To begin with, there are certain commodities that you don't want to ship around the world for one of two reasons. Number one, components that are big and bulky, think body subassemblies and chassis subframes, they need to be produced locally. The other subset are those products requiring customization. Think seats, instrument panels, exterior components that are painted. So we are partnering, as an example, with two U.S. companies, Lear for all of our seating, and Javis for all of our external painted components. All told, we've got 5 global Tier 1 suppliers who are co-locating with us in King Abdullah Economic City. When you add the partnership Tier 2s that we are adding to support them, we've got about 45% of our bill of material localized, which is exactly what you would expect. The balance of the bill of material, you want to leverage that global supply chain. We go out with a techno-commercial analysis for every commodity that we bring in. It's the only way you can assure that you have the highest quality components at the best price. As an example, we're getting our e-drive units from Hyundai in Korea. We get to leverage the absolute scale of Hyundai, and in return, we get powertrains that are cost-effective, have a low weight,
package really, really well, and are extremely efficient. So that's how we balance this need to utilize the global supply chain while at the same time localizing the part of the industry that must be localized.
Mark, how does it look from where you're sitting at Lucid? Is it the same view from where Seer is here in Riyadh?
To a wide extent, it's similar. But first of all, before I go into the supply chain question, first of all, I also wanted to say how honored I am to be here today with the esteemed panels here. And we actually are the first automotive company that decided to invest in a plant here in the kingdom. And we are really excited to be here, actually together with Seer, and I will elaborate in a second. We learned out of this turmoil over the last 5 years, basically 3 things. First of all, it's about vertical integration. The second topic is about localization, and the third topic is around long-term stability. Why vertical integration? We made early on the decision to develop all of our key components in-house. That means that we are less dependent on the global supply chain because we actually can develop it ourselves, we produce it ourselves. We started that in the United States, in our plant in Arizona. We built all of our cars there. We built our drive units there, the major components of the powertrain, the battery packs and battery modules. So we are actually quite highly vertically integrated. Why is that important? If you run into supply chain constraints, as we have seen in the last couple of years, you can make changes yourself. Talking about rare earth materials and permanent magnets for our drive units. We have the ability, and we are actually redeveloping our drive units right now to consume less rare earth materials and therefore being less dependent. So that's the power of vertical integration. The second topic about localization. As I just mentioned, we are producing most of our key components first in the US, and now we're doing the same in our plant in King Abdullah Economic City, where we're currently building a full plant with 150,000 units of capacity. And we're doing this together with Seer. The 5 components that Jim just mentioned are also the components that we are localizing. And it's also the same like what Jim just said. Some things you definitely want to localize, and others you want to have access to the global markets. And for that, coming to the third point, the stability, for that you need stability, that you basically have regulatory environment, tariffs that you can rely on. That's also a reason why we made, as the first automotive manufacturer back in 2020, the decision to build a plant in the kingdom. Quite frankly, at that time, that was very unique. And we've been asked very, very often, why are you doing this? Why are you not building the second plant in China, as everybody was about to do at that time? And we already at that time thought, okay, things are going to change. There will be much more pressure and turmoil in China. And therefore, we made the decision here to really buy into the Vision 2030 and be a part of that vision.
Well, definitely, you've sidetracked now the tariffs at 145%. That's just been dropped to 30% on China. So good call there. Can both the U.S. and Saudi Arabia are huge players in the energy space? They are as big as they come. What role does the ongoing energy transition and electrification play in driving the supply chain dynamics within the energy sector, your sector?
Well, absolutely, and I'd also like to reiterate my thanks for being able to be here and be part of such a historic event that we have today. As we take a look at the energy dynamics that are going on in the world, it's clear that the world is going to need more power tomorrow than it has today. We see reports from well-known sources like Bloomberg that state that energy demand is going to increase by more than 30% over the next 5 years, and with electrification demand increasing by more than 75%. So there's going to be a need for more as we take a look at the energy security of the world. And in doing that, with the importance that Saudi Arabia plays in energy, it's critical that we start right here. And that can be achieved really through three areas. The first area is improving the efficiency and maximizing existing energy sources. They're going to be needed to maintain the future, and that comes through things like connected plants that we do through a joint venture called Plant Digital, where we actually connect to existing infrastructure and make it more efficient. The second is working with transition fuels, such as our investment in LNG, that's going to help to augment that power. And lastly is going to be moving into new fuels like sustainable aviation fuel and other renewables. It's going to take all of those sources to be able to meet the world's energy demands. And as I take a look at the importance of the region here, I'm very proud of the fact that we've now scaled up more than 700 local employees, with half of those being Saudi nationals, in key positions in commercial, R&D, and other areas of investment as we work to meet those challenges of tomorrow.
Mr. Sabah, Al-Fanar plays a key role in building Saudi Arabia's power infrastructure, both as an EPC contractor and as a local manufacturer of grid components, high voltage direct current cables, equipment, and so on. As the kingdom scales up its power system to really power that industrial growth, how are you advancing localization of these components locally, and how is that contributing to the resilience of your supply chains?
Thank you for the question. I think it might be just touch on this same subject, is to look at Al-Fanar started their manufacturing initiative, the first one, maybe 30 years ago. And when we started, the electrification supply chain was almost zero in Saudi Arabia, that we had to import even steel boxes where we house the equipment. So we thought this is a good project to start. And what I would like to say here is that, which will reflect on the future, is that with the bundle of government initiatives and all the facilities which was provided to us, we were able to build an infrastructure and a supply chain in Saudi Arabia. Nowadays, we are producing high voltage DC equipment within the kingdom in Riyadh. And this is being supplied to maybe one of the most demanding grid in the area, which is the Saudi Arabia grid. This is going to be actually a model for all the grids. We are very proud that we were able to create the supply chain for all of these equipments all over those years. And this was basically due to what we got from what the government was able to put in place as a bundle for facilities for the investors. So this was a journey which I think could be suitable as something to follow for anybody who might be thinking about investing in, especially in the power sector, where everybody knows now it's going to have a huge expansion.
Moving back to the automotive sector, Jim, what sort of collaboration do you envisage between Saudi companies and American companies in that space?
Well, when you think about Sear as a startup, the only way we can get going quickly, efficiently, and sustainably is by partnering with the best of the best. And so in terms of the automotive industry, when you think about collaboration in the automotive industry, invariably you end up in the United States of America. So I'm proud to say that we are collaborating with 10 companies in the United States. We've already talked about Javis and Lear. The American companies benefit because we're utilizing their innovations, we're propelling their job growth, we benefit because we get the technologies that we need and the parts that we need to get moving quickly. But collaboration just doesn't mean business deals. One of our focuses is on human capital development. And in partnership here with the Ministry of Industry and the Ministry of Education, we have kicked off a cooperative education program with Kettering University in Flint, Michigan. As a Kettering grad, I know the power of their cooperative education program. We have 43 of the best and brightest technical engineering graduates now in Flint, Michigan, undergoing a curriculum created just for us in battery electric vehicle technology. The students will spend 6 months at Kettering, and then they'll move to one of the Tier 1 suppliers that we've already talked about in the Detroit area, the automotive capital of the world, and they'll work either at Javis or Lear or one of our other suppliers for 6 months, and then they'll come back to us ready to hit the ground running in their respective areas of the business. So this is how our partners, Kettering University, our supply base, they're helping us build tomorrow's leaders today. So it's collaboration across the board.
Mark, workforce development really essential, right, for resilient supply chains?
Yeah, absolutely essential for us here in the kingdom. Obviously, the plant that we're building here will have 150,000 of capacity, which is our largest plant. So therefore, we need local people. And we are very active in developing this. Actually, would like to point out, as of today already, more than 65% of our employees here in the kingdom are Saudi nationals. And we are increasing this percentage all the time. We are collaborating with HRDF on a program where we are training people for the plant in AMP2, which were in Cake. And those people, they come for 6 months also to the US in our plant in Arizona. They get trained, and after they get trained, then they come back here into the kingdom. Beyond that, we have a cooperation with NAVA, the National Academy, Automotive and Vehicle Academy, where we also have those transfer programs where people come over to the United States to train. But then it's not only bringing people from Saudi to the United States, but it's also the other way around. We recently signed a cooperation with KAUST, with the university, and we are bringing our brightest engineers over here to work with KAUST on leading-edge technology topics, be it autonomous driving, AI modelings, simulation, crash testing, all of those things that are really crucial for the automotive industry, and have our engineers come here to work with the local leading university to develop this talent here locally. So it's very important for us, and we're investing heavily.
Ken, how can joint ventures in the energy sector support advancing localization, particularly in Saudi's case?
Yeah, absolutely. Joint ventures are a way that we can accelerate the speed of development. So as we think about our localization initiatives, by having strong partners like we do in our plant digital joint venture with Aramco, we're able to get real customer insights, be able to understand what their needs are, and develop very dedicated training programs for the localized workforce that is able to meet those customer needs as they develop solutions. So much like what Mark is doing at Lucid, we're able to partner with multiple local universities to do training right here in the region, along with allowing engineers to come over to our U.S. capabilities and labs and train there to come back and take the latest and greatest knowledge into their local facilities.
Jerry, coming back to you, from smart industrial zones to logistics hubs, what role does the PIF play in enabling the digital infrastructure, which is going to be, extremely important? That infrastructure, the computing power needed for agile, tech-enabled supply chains. How is it that you go about bringing that technology and diffusing it locally?
Thank you. Deep local tech-enabled supply chains are the ultimate goal. PIF is a dual mandate investor. So we invest for financial return, and then we also invest to drive the economic diversification of the economy. And we do that in part by setting up OEMs at the end of the value chain that in their own right need to be successful. They need to meet the needs of their customers. But they're also a catalyst to bring in supply chains over time. And so in order to do that, we work with our partners across government and the private sector to create the right enabling environment for those supply chains to be successful. So we look at talent-related issues. Mark mentioned NAVA, which is the National Automotive Vehicles Academy, which took in its first cohort of 210 students in October. This was from 28,000 applicants. We also work on policy-related efforts. So the King Salman automotive cluster has been set up as a special economic zone with a variety of tax and other incentives in order to make it easier to do business there. There is a major transportation and logistics upgrading that's happening across the kingdom, being led by the ministry. And we also put capital to work to accelerate the development of local supply chains. So we have a vehicle called Tusaru, which invests in the mobility ecosystem. Now, given the direction of travel for global manufacturing, increased automation means that cost of capital, access to clean energy, and kind of business-friendly policies in the right G2G trade environment are essential. And we think Saudi is very well positioned for that. Again, to accelerate the development of that infrastructure, we're working with partners such as Google and Amazon and others to set up data centers. There was a large announcement for a large initiative yesterday called Humane, of course, which I think you'll be hearing a lot about over the course of this day, which is another vector for accelerating the development of the infrastructure that businesses need.
Mr. Sabah, AI-powered industrial production can't happen without that digital infrastructure. Al-Fanar is involved in constructing and building data centers across the kingdom. How do you see that space evolving?
Yes, the Al-Fanar, yes, we are involved in data center. We are building data centers in the kingdom. Of course, this is a field where Saudi Arabia is very fit for that. It's mainly because of the availability of energy and competitive prices, and the kind of regulation which is being put by the government also encourage very much of localization. We are also very much involved on the other side, which is supplying the power need for the infrastructure, for the data center infrastructure. It's well known that the data center, normally this industry is very much energy hungry. So one of the main things which we are building our supply chain in Saudi Arabia is to cater for that, with many of our initiatives actually with our American friends. We are already producing with HP servers made in Saudi Arabia, and incidentally it is made by almost 100% female workers. We are also building power modules with Vertiv in Riyadh, also in the industrial area in Riyadh. We are also one of the main suppliers for the infrastructure which is being built in Saudi Arabia to cater for the data center.
In an energy-hungry sector, but where better to be than in the energy kingdom? Yes. Ladies and gentlemen, what we've heard today underscores that resilient supply chains are not just a defensive necessity. It's a strategic asset for industrial growth and global competitiveness. Thank you very much to my panelists, and thank you, our audience.
Thank you, Nasser, and your esteemed panelists for a great session. That was truly a powerful reminder of how collaboration and innovation are actually shaping the industrial backbone of our economies. And now, ladies and gentlemen, we shift our focus to another pillar of global stability and progress, which is energy. The next session is titled Powering the Future, Securing Global Energy Supply. And please join me in welcoming Dr. Daniel Yergin, Vice Chairman of CNP Global, to lead this vital discussion with his esteemed panelists. Welcome, Dr. Daniel. The stage is yours.
Good morning, everybody. Our topic this morning is securing the global energy supply, and we have 4 people on the panel who every day work on securing the energy supply from a global basis. Mohammed Farouk from Adas Holding, Anthony Petrollo from Neighbors, Girish Salagram from Weatherford, and Clay Williams from NOV. Obviously, the oil business, the natural gas business, it's a global business, but the emphasis is also on localization, and certainly that's a very big theme of Vision 2030. So I want to start by just talking to our panel about the roles that their companies have played in the U.S.-Saudi partnership in developing supply, and some examples of what you're doing in terms of collaboration. And I thought I'd begin with Anthony Petrollo, because I think for 40 years you were working in the kingdom. And then almost exactly 8 years ago, at the same time as when President Trump visited the first time here, you established a joint venture here. Why did you do that, and how's it worked out?
Well, it's worked out fantastically well. The premise of the joint venture was back in 2016, 2017, Aramco was interested in securing its long-term needs for drilling rigs. And at the same time, Vision 2030 was born, and they wanted to improve local manufacturing. So the premise of the joint venture was to create a program in which Aramco would commit to deploy 50 rigs costing about $2.5 to $3 billion over 10 years against 10-year payout contracts. And that kind of program was unparalleled in the industry, and it represented a great opportunity for Neighbors. We had been in the kingdom for 40 years. We had worked for Aramco.
So let me ask you, has it worked out?
It's worked out extremely well. Yeah.
Good, good. Let me ask Girish about your experience.
Yeah, you know, we've been in the kingdom for just about as long, several decades of experience, and had tremendous partnership both with Aramco on developing technology, working closely with them, but also with other local companies. So we've had a joint venture in the kingdom for over 40 years. It's the most successful joint venture in the history of the company, has done extremely well, and continues to develop new technology, create more value for both Aramco as well as for the shareholders.
Yeah, so I want to come back and talk about some of the new technologies, but Clay, your experience.
You bet. So like Tony and Girish, NOV, our organization has been here since 1977. What I'd say is about 10, 15 years ago, in conjunction with Vision 2030, we decided to step up our investment in the kingdom. This is such a large and important market for all of us, and a couple of great examples of collaboration that have come out of that. First is our Arabian rig manufacturing joint venture with Aramco. Aramco brought capital. They brought a lot of market insights. They know what they need in terms of drilling assets, working closely with Neighbors and Tony and creating Sanad out of that. And of course, NOV brought manufacturing expertise. The result of that partnership is the world's largest, most efficient drilling equipment manufacturing operation that we built in Ras Al Khair, and it's been working great. Delivered 10 rigs that are efficient and safe, low environmental impact. Another good example of that, NOV's very big in manufacturing composite tubulars around the world. We operate about 24 plants. We heard about the kingdom's aspirational policies to use oil in a way that doesn't create greenhouse gases. So petrochemicals and plastics and the like, we use those sorts of inputs, resins, and in our composite pipe. And so we built our largest, most efficient pipe plant here in the kingdom as well. And it's both have been great successes. This has been a very important and strategic investment for our company.
Well, I want to come back and discuss some of the specific technologies, but Mohammed, you have a particularly interesting story because you didn't start in Saudi Arabia, but now you're a Saudi Arabian company. Tell us how you came here.
Sure. I think we have a very exciting story. We started back maybe in the early 2000s, working in the region and focusing on offshore at that time.
And that was, you're an Egyptian company originally.
Exactly, at that time. And then in 2014, we started a relationship with Aramco, where Aramco started to encourage local and regional players to take part into the services activities with the offshore activities. And in 2017, we listed the company in London Stock Exchange, and we start actually to grow regionally more aggressively here in Saudi. We actually acquired some business from neighbors where they were selling their offshore to focus on the Sanad story. We acquired from Weatherford also some assets. And back in 2020, during the COVID, the PIF said, okay, guys, we want really to take the company private, and they got almost 37% of the company. And we started focusing on growing in Aramco. There was the growth plan of the 13 million barrel with aggressive growth in the offshore. We did one of the most aggressive projects by refurbishing 19 jackup, which is one off story, where we bought most of the equipment from NOV as American companies. We refurbished those assets, we put them in place. We listed in Tadawul as a Saudi company, where we moved our headquarters to Khobar and became our center of gravity. And we listed the company late 2023, and today we are one of the largest companies in Tadawul, even from an equity.
So you're based here?
Yes, correct.
But how many countries do you operate in now?
Today we operate in 12 countries, actually starting from Brazil in the west up to India and Southeast Asia, Thailand, Malaysia. But our center of gravity, were more than 60% of the business within Aramco.
But you're a global company operating.
Correct. And this was a good example, moving a national player to be a global champion through this kind of a model, which I think comes with the 2030 vision.
Right. Clay, you've said it's important to be close to operations.
Yes.
Can you explain on that? Why?
Yeah, that was the sort of the basis for our strategic decision to do more here. But close to the customer means close customer relationships, and I think both parties benefit from that meaningfully. And so, as we sort of built out here in Saudi Arabia, we've gotten closer to all of our customers. And by the way, I've got 3 great customers here on the panel with me, and thanks to all 3 of you.
They're all good customers?
Absolutely, and we're grateful for them. But being here close to their operations enables us to do a better job servicing equipment, performing aftermarket support of what they're doing. I think it shortens the feedback loop for an OEM manufacturer like NOV to hear directly from our customers the challenges that they're running into, the opportunities to improve equipment and operations. And so it's really a partnership and a collaboration.
Because you provide the equipment and the components that these companies all use.
Exactly, right. And we're doing more and more manufacturing here in the kingdom. We've grown our investment here 7-fold, and in 10 years, we operate through about 10 locations. About 5 of those are manufacturing plants, and we're building a 6th right now.
So I'd like to hear from you all, in terms of new technological developments or technologies, some examples of what you've developed being based here.
Sure, I'm happy to start. So a moment ago, I mentioned our composite pipe manufacturing.
Why don't you explain what a composite pipe is?
So composite pipe uses fiberglass and resins to build pipe that can hold pressure and deal with temperatures that are found in the oil field.
And not corrode.
And not corrode. That's the key differentiator. So unlike carbon steel, can withstand salt water and sour gases and those sorts of things much, much better, and is a really interesting and clever application of petroleum in a way to monetize that asset that doesn't have a greenhouse gas effect. And so the Aramco here has really embraced this technology, particularly around the unconventional developments. What we found when we built our plant here is we really created a manufacturing hub that could innovate new products for this market that we can now make in our plant in San Antonio, Texas, and sell to our oil field customers in the United States, and vice versa. So we sort of have these two composite pipe manufacturing hubs. They're advancing technology with the help of our customers, and it lifts both of their operations up. They both benefit from that network collaboration.
Right, and that started here.
Yes.
On the composite. So,
yeah, echoing on what Trey said, I think we are very fortunate here to have a customer like Aramco who's got a very vast set of operations, and it gives us simultaneously a few things. One is it gives us a very large scale of operations, big volume, but also a customer that is very committed to the latest technology and wants to ensure reservoir integrity. So, working with them over the past several decades, a lot of new innovations that have come out of here in our cementing products business, for example, our stage tools that are used as part of the cementing process to ensure wellbore integrity. That's something that's got pioneered here. It's gotten used in other parts of the world. We've developed technologies very specifically on intervention around how to sidetrack wells that again have had a lot of application here, and then we have been able to take that to other parts of the world. One of the highest degrees of managed pressure drilling adoption, that's something that Weatherford's been a pioneer here, and we've learned a lot through that. And what's really exciting about it is there is a very focused, very definitive and very purposeful sense of development of technology. It's here's a problem that we're trying to solve, how do we work together to do it, come up with a solution, a very process-oriented fashion of saying, here's how we're going to deploy it, and then you see what else you can do with it, and then it becomes something that's available for other parts.
And started from here.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tony?
Yeah, so in the United States, actually, we started developing some new technology to automate drilling rigs. We've developed our own operating system similar to an iPhone that has an app environment with it, and we've also focused on functionalizing the rig with robots. And we're in the process of doing that in Saudi Arabia. We actually have certain rigs already starting to operate that. And the concept is a safer environment, more efficient. It gets people out of the red zone, out of harm's way, and optimizes drilling performance. I think it's the future of the industry, and Aramco has been a steadfast partner in helping us exploit it.
Right.
Yes, I think as a global player today, we have 51 jackup, which is the largest number of jackup worldwide. We need to monitor very important aspects on the ESG, which is the safety, which is a very important aspect for Aramco. For Aramco, safety comes even before productivity. So we developed what's called Rig Eye, which is artificial intelligence engine with the video streaming to monitor all the operation on the rig real time, looking at red zone, looking at critical job, looking at safety aspects, and give a real-time warning to what's called operating command center, saying this guy is doing the right thing or doing the wrong thing, and stops things if it's going to be wrong. This has developed here as a starting point with a few of the jackup. Today it has been democratized on all the jackups within Aramco, on all the land rigs within Aramco we operate, and even we take this technology all over the world. So all our fleet now is equipped with the Rig Eye technology, which is AI driven.
What do you call it, the red?
Rig Eye. Which is the eye for the rig.
Right.
And it's AI driven, and it's very successful, and actually working to patent it now and even sell this technology in
When did you start developing it?
We started developing here in October.
How long ago?
It took us like 2.5 years, and 1 year to develop, 1 year to start on the pilot, and now it's on all our rigs.
So you mentioned AI, and I think it'd be very useful, obviously, to just ask for all of you, is AI having much of an impact on your companies yet? Or is it something that's still in development?
I think it's in the second or third inning of the ball game. The idea is to use AI to read downhole information.
For those who don't follow baseball, that means about 1/3 of the way.
Yeah, about 1/3 of the way. To use AI to read downhole information from the downhole wellbore and use that to optimize stuff at the surface in terms of what the rig is actually doing, to optimize ROP and drilling time. And we all have applications along those lines today. That is the future. And it's also the future for our people on the rig, because historically, the iron was dumb iron, a lot of manual labor, but the goal of this automation is to actually upskill the talent And the idea is for a driller who runs a drilling rig, he has a high school education. In about 7 years or 10 years, he can be the person who runs the drilling rig. It's a $55 million piece of equipment. And the idea is with these tools now, he'll have a profession similar to what a G5 pilot has. And that becomes a destination job. So the quality of employment is actually going to be increased as we roll out this technology. I think it's very exciting for the labor force.
Right. Yep. No, completely agree. I think it's had a very deep and profound effect in several areas where we've been able to apply it. But what's exciting is there's still so much other elements that just are untouched, and we still live in a world that is filled with a lot of manual processes, and there's a lot of excitement. I'll give you two very quick examples. One, just sort of picking up from where Dr. Farouk was talking about, very similar kind of an application where we do contracts where we've got complete ownerships of these LSTK type of contracts, lump sum turnkey, and same sort of concept where we've got AI built into the rig floor, and we're able to monitor everything. We're able to see if someone's doing something inappropriately. There's an alarm that goes off. Very similar concept. I was on one of these rigs a few weeks back, and it was fascinating to see. We played around a little bit, and immediately it's very real time, and it's very appropriate. Another example is in our tubular running service business, where we've incorporated AI into the system. It's a fully automated system. You now need only one person to operate it, so again, completely safe from not having anyone in the red zone standpoint. But what it now does is also have built-in AI algorithms that the computer generates and determines what the ideal torque is. So you don't have, again, any human intervention, judgment that goes in, and you're again guaranteed a better wellbore.
And I guess as pointed out, you're running a $55 million piece of equipment. You want it to operate properly.
Indeed.
Clay?
Yeah, I think we are also just on the edge of seeing all the wonderful things that AI can do in our industry, which has been dominated by a lot of sort of tribal knowledge, experience, the computer.
What do you call it? Tribal knowledge?
Tribal knowledge about how do we
pass
drill
it down?
How do we drill in this particular basin? And what we're finding, and what others here on the stage are finding, is that the computer learns much faster than the humans in so many areas. And there's sort of an interesting offshoot of that we're benefiting from at NOV, which is the AI needs data sets to learn from. It needs data to feed it. And we're finding great opportunities here in the kingdom and elsewhere around the world in building out the infrastructure at the edge to do more edge computing, to put data into the cloud. We're working with Aramco here in the kingdom to employ our wired drill pipe technology, which basically increases the rate of gathering data from the bit, from the very end of the drill string that might be miles in the earth to the surface by 10,000-fold, which is what wired drill pipe can do. So it's basically a broadband connection to the bottom of the hole. So that much richer data stream enables these AI models to learn faster, to make microsecond sorts of decisions around operating the drilling rig, for instance. And Aramco's been a great partner in highlighting the benefits of that sort of technology.
Yeah. So I want to turn now to the question of supply chains, which of course has already been a topic of discussion, and ask you guys, if we were up here 10 years ago, would we have been talking about supply chains?
Probably in a very different context, if we would.
Okay, tell us what's changed.
So I think, the fact that you've got 4 CEOs here today talking about supply chains, it's in itself a very significant change. It's not a function that's sort of in the bowel of the organization anymore. It's something that's very front and central. It's mission critical, and it's something that is a critical element of enterprise risk management.
So why has this happened?
My view is it's very simple. It's a very simple function of being able to deliver for customers. And without an incredibly robust supply chain, and without understanding all the different ways it can go rise, we have learned over the past few years there's everything from supply shocks caused because of trade wars, because of geopolitical conflicts, because of pandemics, all kinds of stuff happens. So you need to understand how your supply chain works.
Supply chain has always been core to our operations. It's always been critical. As a capital-intensive business, you need to feed the beast, so to speak, and you have to have reliable ways of feeding it. And the concept of delivering, as Clay was saying, having sources close to the action to support that is important for turnover.
But if supply chains up here is a big concern, but if you went back a few years ago with supply chains down there, we're trying to get at is just from your experience on the ground, what's changed? Obviously, COVID was one thing, a world of tariffs, trade wars, national security?
Yeah, I think we need to draw an important factor, which is Aramco, as one of the largest producers, a few years ago started a very important program, which is the ICTAVA program, in Kingdom Total Value Added. And this program put a lot of weight on how much is really produced within the Saudi Arabia.
In other words, localization.
Localization. So this has been a major transformation where today companies started at 10% contents, today reach 50 to 60% contents, and this makes a major aspects because having the proximity to the action plan is very important. Producing locally, fostering the economy, making it more cheaper, more affordable, make it the timing. So I think this has played an important role over the last 10 years, and I think it's still progressing, and I think it's a very important factor in the formula.
You know, what he said is very important in the sense that, for example, today SANAD spends $600 million a year on maintenance, CapEx, and capital expenditures to keep the rigs operating. 5 years ago, the percentage of spent in-country to deliver that was maybe 70%. Today, we're at 92% of the $600 million we're spending in the country. That's a huge change, but that's better for the rigs, it's better for operations, and of course, better for the country.
Right, but so, let me ask you this, on a global basis now, not just your operations here, have you had to change how you manage procurement and thinking about supply chains because of tariffs, political issues, security issues?
Yeah, we certainly have. I would say as a global manufacturer, we've always had to be a little bit nimble because of global conflicts that would happen sometimes around the world. In the first Trump administration, we dealt with a round of tariffs that caused us to rethink what we're making where and adjust. But what really highlighted the importance of supply chain was the disruption that came out of the COVID lockdowns and really taught the world that we were all kind of living in a world where supply chains had been very tightly optimized by a generation of MBAs, I think, that were very focused
on efficiency.
On efficiency and cost only. And what we learned is that, hey, resiliency matters too. And since that time, I think the designs of our supply chains, of everyone's, has been more oriented around the resilience dimension as well.
Can you fill in, or any of you fill in, when we say resiliency, kind of give some examples of what that means in a granular way?
So I would say diversity of vendors, multiple vendors that have been pre-qualified to supply, and that capability then to be flexible, to adjust to whatever's next in terms of a supply chain shock.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And I think, ultimately what we're all trying to do in similar and sometimes slightly different fashions, but we're trying to balance three things that are all equally important to get that resiliency element. The first is security of supply, the second is cost, and the third is cycle times. So we're trying to make sure we're balancing all of that, and all of that leads back to how do you design your supply chain to get this ideal balance if you've got the right volumes on a global basis, but you've also got the right local capability to deliver fast as well as drive that in-country value.
So does that, go ahead, Tony?
I was going to say, historically, a lot of material came from the Far East or the U.S. and was imported into this region. With Vision 2030, there's been a sea change here. And give you an example, today, we can actually make a catwalk, which is a piece of equipment for a rig, cheaper in Saudi Arabia than we can anywhere in the world. We're actually running costs 20, 30% less than anywhere in the world.
Why?
Because of the investment that was made here in local sources, local content. The labor pool is very talented, and the sources and access to stuff is really improved. And so it's a big difference, especially when you look at landed cost.
Right. So most of you have all been operating here, as you say, 30, 40 years. So in the last 5 years, tell us about the changes you've seen in terms of the kind of capabilities that you've described in the workforce and the ability to deliver lower cost.
Yes, so the talent has improved dramatically. We've made a lot of investment with local vocational schools and universities. we have engineers here that have graduated that rival anywhere else in the world, and the work ethic is really top class. That's a large driver of the change that we've seen here in the kingdom.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I think talent is really a key differentiator. And back to Dr. Farouk's point on this whole focus around ICTWA and Saudization, that's really allowed a simultaneously from the operator side, from the supplier side, as well as from the university side, a tremendous focus on developing talent. So we're now able to bring in students as interns, get them in as early graduates, see them progress through the leadership ranks, see movement across companies, which is ultimately healthy for the industry, and really then have a workforce that's very self-sufficient, that's capable, versus this notion of you're just constantly rotating expats in for 2 to 3 years. You're always going to have some degree of that, some element of that, but having that base load, that base capacity of local talent, I think is incredibly critical to any economy and any sector.
Yeah, I think it has different dimension. One is the talent and people side. Again, I have to refer to Aramco because it's the university there. They initiated something called SADA, Saudi Arabian Drilling Academy, which I think most of us has students and graduates going there. And we have to sponsor those graduates coming from school to this program, and we pay the money. They get the best in-class training, and we got very good employees at the end. The other dimension which we need to mention is the capital market. The capital market, including the debt and the equity, believes in the business, understand the business quite well. So we have the right financing, we have the right understanding from the equity market, which put investments there for a long term. And this is a very important enabler, allowing us really to be a long-term player and really looks for that in a very positive manner. So it's the people side, the investment side, and also the technology today available.
So Clay, were you going to add something about the people?
I was, and I agree and echo the other comments made here around the workforce. Terrific. So you can build a factory, you can have a terrific workforce, which we do here. The third part of that for a manufacturer is we were concerned about the supply chains of raw materials feeding our factories once we built these things and staffed them. And the kingdom has been very, very good about listening to our concerns and responding to them. So over the past 5 years, getting back to your question, we've seen the investment in all of the other supply chains that produce the raw materials, the steel that we need in our operations. We buy HDPE from SABIC. We buy resins from JANA for our composite pipes that I mentioned earlier. And so the build out of this ecosystem is really sort of it's closing the loop on everything and really making, low cost catwalks, for instance, a possibility and a reality for this market.
So we talked about talent here. Let me just ask you, since you operate in the United States too, is talent a problem in the United States?
I would say talent's an important issue everywhere and a challenge to just find the best and the brightest constantly. I think, I think there is a tremendously greater focus in our industry in this particular part of the world and not as much in the United States. So I think the U.S. tends to pose a slightly bigger challenge, just given, I would say a tremendously greater amount of optionality and lesser interest.
Right.
I'll add, I think in a lot of ways our industry has been demonized a bit.
Not here, but there.
Not here, but there. The U.S. and Europe and those two markets for us is more challenging than most of the rest of the world.
Right. But here, you find a very motivated and
absolutely
talented workforce. Right. What about emissions? If we change the topic, addressing methane and those issues, how are you playing that?
Yeah. I think what we started an important program is to reduce the emissions for our rigs by looking at, first of all, putting batteries to take some of the loads from the engines, so we reduce the number of engines and the number of operating hours, which I think is important to reduce emissions significantly. We look at using, for instance, the LED for all the lighting in the rigs, which is a significant amount. We look on energy saving. So there is a very important program, which again we started here within Saudi Aramco, and it's going quite well. and we are actually taking it outside now in other countries. So I think that's an important to have the emissions, specifically from the rig prospect, from lifting prospects. Lifting here is very low emission by nature. So I think, but I'm speaking about the engines and the rigs and the services.
I'd like to hear from the rest of you on.
There's a big misconception that the hydrocarbon industry doesn't care about emissions and sustainability, and that's a big mistake. Take our host here, Aramco. They made it a strategic priority for sustainability. They, among the major producers, they have the lowest CO2 per BOE in the world, which is amazing, and they're going to do better than that in the future. As Dr. Farouk said, when it looks at the drilling rig today produces 20 to 25 tons of CO2 a day, and there's 1,500 around the world. And so the industry is making a priority to find solutions, everything from converting diesel engines to dual fuel with natural gas, fuel additives like hydrogen or nanomaterial to add to for combustion, digitalization to make the drilling process more efficient, to get more wells per less CO2 per well. And those initiatives are all being driven in the field by people looking every day for efficiencies. I think the energy industry over the years has done really major problems it's tackled very well. I think they are going to tackle this problem, and you're not going to see just change. You're going to see leadership from the energy industry.
Right, and certainly the enormous progress on methane, which goes unrecognized.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I'll just add to it. We look at it again with a simplistic framework, 3 elements to it. The first is reporting. The old adage of measurements drive behavior. So we just released last week our 4th annual sustainability report that shows a tremendous improvement in our own emissions over the past few years, and we'll continue to do that. The second is really how do we decarbonize our own operations. Doing a tremendous amount of work around that globally, more electrification of our fleets, reduction in driving, etc. In Saudi, for example, we've converted our power sources and our operating base, from diesel to connected to the grid. So that drives a reduction. And the third is around how do we help customers decarbonize their operations, and that's everything from reducing the number of people that need to go out to well sites. Again, fewer trips, fewer driving, automated technologies like I talked about earlier with Vero, and we've got an emissions detection and management platform in collaboration with Honeywell that we have launched. So things like that again bring technology to the fore.
Yeah, the drilling efficiency that Tony and Dr. Farouk just referenced, I think, is a real way to impact the greenhouse gas intensity of barrels. And there's a really good example here in the kingdom that applies the technology I referenced earlier. The wired drill pipe enabled Aramco to do much better geosteering in their reservoir. And they actually published an SPE paper recently that said that particular well that they drilled had 30% higher net to gross, which simplistically means 30% higher production and recoveries, right? So you're amortizing a larger oil volume over that greenhouse gas footprint. Ultimately, that's more efficient coming out of this digital technology.
Right, so one last question. Just recently, I wrote a new epilogue for my book, The Prize, and said, what are the lessons of it? And one of the obvious lessons is that this industry moves in cycles. There's a lot of wisdom on this stage. What's the advice that you would give to people about and how you manage through the cycles? Because there's always going to be cycles.
There's a lot of scars on this stage, Dan.
Okay.
Sometimes they're a little
experience. Let's call it experience.
Experience. So, well, 40 years in the oil field, I would counsel patients and just recognize that what this industry does is critical and it's important, and it lifts billions of people out of poverty every single day. And I think you got to stay focused on that, keep your teams focused on that, the fact that we're doing good in the world every single day. And I know one day something will replace oil and gas. It's going to be a lower carbon footprint. In fact, I would bet on this industry to figure out what that's going to be. But in the meantime, let's stick to the mission and keep doing what we the world requires us to do.
So Girish, managing through cycles.
Yeah, completely agree with what Clay said. I'd add to it of really focusing on what's important consistently without allowing yourself to get whipsawed by the cycles. Cycles will happen, it's just a function.
And what's communicating with your team.
Right, and what's important is focusing on the things that matter, customers, operations, and technology. To Clay's point, this is where the action is. Just a case in point, I think I've met Clay 4 times this year. 3 of them have happened to be in Saudi Arabia. So, and we're both based in Houston. So, go figure. So I think
this is where it's happening.
This is where it is. So really spending time with your customers, really driving the technology that matters, that makes us a better company and a better industry for the longer term.
Tony, your experience or advice?
So we're all public companies, and you have the vagaries of the public markets and the quest to meet quarterly earnings and profit maximization, and that leads you to focus on price. And I think that's a mistake. I think if you want to build a long-term business, you got to focus on long-term structure and growth potential, and building that stable platform for long-term growth and shared upside is, I think, the secret for success, and that should be the priority. That gives you a big business, but also gives you a great future.
Mohammed?
Yeah, I think what Tony said is the key, where you focus on the cost, where you're becoming very cost efficient, and then give your client a very affordable price, not a very high price, because affordability is the key.
But through the...
Exactly, so affordability. So today we focus on affordability, where we have one of the highest backlog contracts, which give you the time to pass this cycle. So this is the affordability is the secret, and affordability happens through cost efficiency.
Right. Well, let me thank all 4 of you for joining us today to discuss securing the global energy supply of the future. And these are the people, among others, many others here, who are doing that. So please join me in thanking them. Thank you.
Hello. Well, what a productive morning we had. Hi, Dan. We are going to break now for lunch. But I have 2 quick announcements. Please be back at 2 p.m. sharp, because we have a star-studded afternoon of leaders and leaders from industry as well. And also, please be sure to visit some of the exhibitions from our great partners. They have some really, really great setups in Prosperity Hall. So take the time, and we'll see you back here at 2.